Hi, folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money Podcast. This is Season 15, Episode 13. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Here we are once again. Great to have you with me. Thank you so much for joining me in the long journey. And it is a long journey towards financial independence. Life sometimes happens. And when it does, you're going to need to adjust, deal with the challenges, and refocus. And today I want to help you do just that. We're talking about rolling with the punches today. So after the main body of the show, I'll read a review that's been left recently and talk about what we're going to be discussing next time. But as usual, this podcast continues to be brought to you with the help of my very good friends at 7 Investment Management. They've been helping me out here since the spring of 2011, and they've just agreed to renew for another year. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Could not have built this to what it is without them. So please do check out what they're up to. They're at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk. Go check them out. And don't forget the Meaningful Money branded self-investment platform. All you need to know about that, if you're thinking of getting started investing, is at meaningfulmoney.tv/podcastinvest. Go check it out. Okay, if there is one thing which is guaranteed in life, it's that at some point, at least, it'll be a rocky ride. I've never met anyone who has sailed through life facing no significant challenges. Some have to deal with more than others, of course, but we all experience tribulation of some kind in our personal and our financial journey. And if we know that up front, we can roll with the punches and even try to make the best of them, using them to make real progress, learn valuable lessons. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Remember, notes and links, all that good stuff is at the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/PP13. That's for Planning with Purpose 13. That's the name of this season. meaningfulmoney.tv/PP13. Here's everything you need to know. FYI, I have a new gadget today, which helps me trigger those sound effects, and actually everything is being recorded on here. So a little bit trial and error. So I wonder if you can hear a difference. Same microphone and stuff, but I wonder if you can hear a difference. But probably it's just me. Now, adversity is a teacher. That's the first thing you need to know. While it's no kind of fun in the moment, once the initial difficulty, the initial thing that you're dealing with has eased, and it usually does, it might be then easier to take stock of what's going on and try and look at things a little bit more objectively. And as we do that, we learn some valuable lessons. I was advising clients back in 2007, 8, 9. Investors had a pretty torrid time then. All my clients, though, were multi-asset investors, of course, because that's what we do here. And they got off fairly lightly, all right? While markets were down 40-odd%, the worst client I ever saw was down 12% over the particular window that we were looking at. And without exception, I would sort of slide the schedule of investments over the table towards them, and they would take one look at the bottom right-hand corner where the total was, and they would say, oh, thank goodness, I thought it was going to be worse than that. But, it still wasn't any fun, even only, in inverted commas, a 12% decline. That's still pretty grim by any means. And, this is people's hard-earned, hard-won money. Looking back now, though, with the benefit of hindsight, and I often remind clients of this, we can see that even the worst financial crisis in living memory was short-term. My clients and I, we held our nerve. I'd like to think that my sort of coaching and support was a little part of them being able to hold their nerve, and they rode out the difficulties. So when the next prolonged stock market decline comes, and it surely will, they'll be ready. They've learned the lesson, famous lesson from Nick Murray, that the declines are temporary, but the advance is permanent. They are all significantly better off now than they were at the start of the financial crisis in 2007. So in adversity, we learn how the world works and how we work. It's importantly, I've had occasionally conversations with clients, and I keep pretty good notes of my client meetings. And about some of the things that they said at the time in the midst of the difficulty. And I remember how they reacted to news events, even some specific news headlines that they'd read the day before I met them or whatever, how they felt at the time. Self-awareness, as Neil Page was saying last week, is a superpower. And it's learned, I think, most acutely in times of difficulty. So in adversity, we learn how the world works and how we work. Powerful lessons on our journey of building wealth. So adversity is a teacher. Secondly, nothing has the power to completely derail your progress. We're talking largely about events happening to us here, rather than the things we bring on ourselves. But even so, it's a fact that very few things in life have the power to completely derail our plans and our progress. And I think we do well to remember this and maybe sort of write it down somewhere so that we can refer to it when adversity does strike. Nothing really has the power to completely derail our progress. Let's consider a couple of examples. Losing your job. Obviously, that's going to have an impact, right? But you are unlikely, I would venture, to remain jobless for too long, although, of course, that depends on skill set and lots of other factors, of course. Losing your income would have an immediate impact on your ability to save, obviously. You might have to dip into your emergency fund. And if it is the case that you end up not working for quite a long time or having to accept lower paid work, then yes, your plans might have to change to some degree, but probably not entirely. You'll have to pivot, but you probably won't run into a brick wall, okay? It won't be game over. Instead, it might just be an adjustment to the course. What if you make a bad investment and you lose everything? Well, hopefully you didn't bet the whole farm on it. If you did, then you're a victim of nothing other than your own foolishness. But you probably didn't go all in on that investment. It was just a proportion of your money, and so that is the proportion that you've lost. You've still got your income, though, so you can replace the lost money. But the episode will set you back on your journey, maybe. It might set you back 2 or 3 years or even more on the course towards financial independence. But it probably won't drop you right back at the start, all right? There is an element of snakes and ladders going on here. Sometimes we slip back due to these things, but we're still on the journey, just a little bit further behind than we might like to be. So I think we do well to remember that it's rare that an event will arise where we are completely derailed by that. I think that's unlikely. The other thing to know at this point is that programming is underrated, and we should actually embrace programming. Part of being prepared to deal with tricky challenges and punches as they arrive is to, be prepared, right? So don't underestimate the significant impact of good information on this whole process. There is a reason why things are easier to remember when we repeat them. Repetition is a surefire way to embed things in our brains. Consider it programming for our biological computers. Learning isn't just about knowledge, but it's about behavior change. And as we know by now, behavior is a key factor in our journey towards financial independence. So let's commit to positive programming by a process of continual learning, including repetition of positive mantras or affirmations. There's a reason I keep reminding you that line again. Stock market declines are temporary, but the advance is permanent. It's not my line, it's from Nick Murray, but it's the best one-liner I've heard yet that sums up market movements. I must say it twice, 3 times a day to clients. It's constant repetition and reminding. It's programming so that when adversity strikes, those things come to us easily, right? Listening to this show, other great shows, reading good books, watching videos, it's all programming, and it'll serve you really well when adversity strikes. So adversity itself is a teacher. We need to make the point of learning from it when it happens. We need to understand and remember that nothing really has the power to completely derail our progress, or very, very few things. And that programming is important. It's underrated. We need to harness it and embrace programming and teach ourselves in the good times. It's like training. We teach ourselves in the good times so that when the bad times happen, we are ready. Okay? So with those things in mind, let's have a look at what you need to do. Love this new gadget. It makes the sound effects very easy to do. Okay, everything you need to do. First thing is to identify potential challenges up front and prepare. So given that we're talking about rolling with the punches, let's use a boxing analogy here, which should be fun because I know about as much about boxing as I do about theoretical physics. I think it's fair to say that the performance in the ring, in the actual bout, is the product of a whole load of work done beforehand in training, nutrition, psychology, analyzing the opponent, all that sort of stuff, loads more besides. But we can also benefit from being prepared for adversity in advance before it happens. So we need to think through, what are the main risks we might face? A couple of examples. What if you lose your income? Right? Well, how might that happen? Redundancy, maybe? Okay. Well, we can build up an emergency fund, which will give us some breathing space, knowing that our bills will be paid for a period of time while we look for work. Early death, right? Well, we can take out life insurance. Okay, obviously we won't be around anymore, but the life insurance would pay out to look after our family. What about prolonged illness? Well, our emergency fund that we've built, coupled with an income protection policy, that will see much of our income replaced if it happens. Right? We've thought about it, the risk ahead of time and prepared. What if the stock market tanks? Right? Another possible scenario. Not possible. There is no if. It will happen. You can be prepared by learning about how markets work. So read The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. Read Investing Demystified by Lars Kroyer. Remember, the stock market rewards the patient and punishes the rest. The stock market rewards the patient and punishes the rest. That's Andy Hart's line. You can diversify, obviously, by using multi-asset funds. You reduce your exposure to any one region or asset class. Right? That's a preparation you can do in advance. You can put in place commitment devices like Neil Page talked about last week to prevent you selling falling assets at the wrong time. It really is worth taking the time to identify the threats that you might face and plan on how you might deal with them ahead of time. I'm not saying that that's going to be a really fun hour that you spend doing this, but it sure will be time well spent. Second thing we need to do is to react slowly. Knee-jerk behavior is always, folks, a bad idea. It can be really tempting, though, in the moment. We can even justify knee-jerk reactions by couching them in sort of positive terms, like, yes, I'm acting quickly. I'm taking positive action. It's just rubbish. Quick action is rarely well-thought-out action and should therefore be avoided. You can't act quickly enough in any case to make any difference in the market, right? You and I, we are retail investors. By the time we place a trade instruction on our platform, markets can move an awful lot by the time that trade gets actioned. If you're buying and selling funds, that might be a 3 or 4 day window that fund gets bought or sold. So, compared with the microsecond trades happening all around the world every day, which drive market movements, really we can't move quickly enough. So there is almost certainly nothing to be gained from feeling like you have to react in the moment. Putting commitment devices or frameworks in place can help prevent you from having to force yourself to slow down at a time when the adrenaline is already pumping, right? Okay, because it's already done. You've already put in the framework. Let's say you read a terrible headline and you know your pension fund is going to take a beating, right? It's easier to refrain from logging into your platform late at night and making a rash decision if you've already committed to never checking your investment value after 7 p.m. or never checking it on a weekend or never after you've had a glass or two of Malbec. You've already made that commitment. You've already built that framework, and it will take over and kick in when your adrenaline is pumping in the moment. And remember, whatever the current threat is, it's unlikely to derail your plans altogether. We talked about that earlier. It's also likely to lead to calmness rather than panic. Remembering, that the threat won't derail things. That should help you feel calm rather than panic and make a bad decision in the moment. Above all, remember that behavior is by far the biggest determinant of our success, or otherwise, as we build our wealth. Reacting slowly might just save you tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds. It's important, okay? So get a hold of yourselves. React slowly. Don't knee-jerk. Really important. Probably the most important thing I'm going to say today is react slowly, right? Third thing we need to do is to consider both the short and the long-term impact of whatever's going on, right? We need to try and quantify the impact where possible. That way we can assess the impact of whatever the current crisis is, and we can adjust accordingly, which more in a minute. Quantifying the impact of an event might not be easy at the sort of far extremities of your timescale, but it is easier in the short term, and then we can work from there. So you've lost your job, right? That's the scenario. What variables might we need to consider in all that? Well, we need to take an estimate of how long we might not have an income. It's only an estimate, we don't know. You need to factor in any redundancy payment you might get and any tax that might be due on that. You need to factor in how much your emergency fund is. You should know that. Knowing those things, how long then, emergency fund plus any redundancy payment, how long can you meet your outgoings, right? That's the framework, the time frame that we're working with now. But can you also cut any expenses to make that time scale longer? These are the kinds of short-term things that you're going to need to think about. But then knocking on from that is the longer-term impact. So if your jobless time is short, it's going to have very little impact on the long term. You're going to adjust, get another job, start saving and all that sort of stuff again. If you're without work for a year, then you are going to erode your emergency fund probably completely. You may even need to dip into other reserves, your investments and stuff if you've got them. And so that will take time to build back up. And so your plans for FI or retirement or whatever might need to be put back a couple of years maybe even more, okay? So that's the longer term impact. Usually the impact is on time frame. But if you know that, then you can commit to short-term decisions when you do find work, which can limit the damage and maybe even get things back on track. So if you've sort of hacked down your expenses a little bit while you've been out of work, why not keep them there for a few months after you've found work and increase your savings rate? If you find work with higher pay, you can commit to living on the income that you had before and saving the extra. And that might even accelerate your journey towards FI or accelerate the clearing of your mortgage or whatever, because you can overpay by more. So by taking a breath and considering and quantifying the impact in the short term, making adjustments accordingly, and then thinking about what the impact might be in the longer term, then you can deal with the punches as they come. It isn't panic, got to change everything. It's take a breath, be calm, quantify the impact, and last thing you need to do, adjust. Make changes, react slowly. You're doing so in a considered way, not a hasty knee-jerk way, which is guaranteed to do more harm than good. So instead, you're using the current challenges to reassess your position and make the necessary changes as far as possible within your new paradigm, whatever is going on with you right now. Now, a challenge like losing your job, the example we just used, that's fairly minor in the grand scheme of things. Losing your ability to work ever again because of a car accident that leaves you disabled, clearly that's a very different thing. We are talking paradigm-shifting events there. On that note, I recommend a book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Had opportunity to listen to Hal speak recently, and he was outstanding. Hal was a sort of superstar salesman in the US at like 22 years old or something, and was in a catastrophic car accident, massive brain injury, but a combination of sort of incredible self-will and what he calls his miracle morning has, turned his life around, and it's a great story. Highly recommend it. I'll put a link in the notes to that. But those kind of scenarios, massive car accidents, debilitating illnesses, they are mercifully rare. I know they happen. If you're listening to this and they've happened to you, you're the exception rather than the rule, which I know is no comfort at all. But they are mercifully rare. But even then, with a good insurance program ahead of time, it is possible for your future to be financially stable at the very least. All right, that's part of being prepared. So I don't want to belittle those things and just say, well, you just need to pivot. I understand that some of these punches, when they happen, are massive, but they are in the minority, the significant minority. Okay. Quick plug for my partner's Life Search, right? If you're thinking about putting your protection program in place or reviewing it, then head over to meaningfulmoney.tv/lifesearch. They'll sort you out for sure. It's an affiliate arrangement, so if you do end up taking out a policy with them, I get a cut of the commission that's due, but it won't cost you any more. But they really are superb. Everybody that's dealt with them and used their services has been delighted as far as I know. So ask, what changes could you make to set things on the right track after the crisis has passed? Remember the levers that you can control: savings rate, investment approach, budgeting, keeping your spending under control. These are the things that you might need to ramp up or down or adjust so that you can readjust your trajectory after things have calmed down. So I suppose I wanted to get across that a few core messages there. Most things are not so massive as to completely derail your trajectory towards your financial independence goals. There's a big factor is being prepared in advance. So think them through and be prepared. Be intentional about your financial journey. Don't just wing it. And then slow down, react slowly and cautiously when things happen. Your training, your programming will kick in at that point. If you've done it, of course, you'll remember the core messages about how markets work and how people work. You'll rein in your behavior and hopefully refrain from making daft decisions in the heat of the moment. That's how you roll with the inevitable punches as you continue on your journey towards financial independence. So I hope that's helpful. Review from Sarah and 052 from Ireland. Hey, Sarah. Ireland. I don't know who 052 is. Sarah and 052. I love this one. Thank you, Sarah. The Meaningful Money podcast takes the complex, murky topic of personal finance, including investing, planning, budgeting, and saving, and makes it a really interesting, accessible subject for the ordinary person. Gives you a better understanding and the ability to manage your finances. Pete is an amazing, engaging and entertaining presenter. Thank you. And this podcast is super easy and enjoyable to listen to. I look forward to each new episode. Sarah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think that might go on a quote card, and see that on the socials before too long. But thank you so much for leaving the review. If you want to do the same, then please do. meaningfulmoney.tv/iTunes if Apple is your poison. Otherwise, wherever you're listening to me, please leave a review. It really, really helps. Okay, next time I'm going to be bringing back the one and only Barney Whiter, aka the Escape Artist, to talk a little bit about his own journey towards financial independence and the key disciplines required to stay the course, really. Since recording that interview, actually, I've had the pleasure of meeting Barney in real life. He's a remarkably insightful guy. Very wise, very sharp, and really a unique way of expressing himself. I enjoyed meeting him very much and enjoyed interviewing him again, and that's coming next week. So, hope you've enjoyed it, folks. Let's bring in the music. There it is. PP13 is the link for this week's show notes. meaningfulmoney.tv/PP13. Links are there, and any comments and questions, you can leave them as well. Don't forget the Facebook group, meaningfulmoney.tv/community. 2,500 plus people in there now. So, hope you've enjoyed it this week. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.